It's almost back to school time for America's kids once again. And at this time, I wanted to throw my voice into the mix, especially for those of you that are considering switching your educational structure for your family. For context, I started homeschooling in 2020 during the COVID era because there were no viable educational options for my daughter at the time. I have a background in education. I educated kids at the college level, and I'm also highly educated. I have two bachelor's and some master's. So I had just recovered from cancer treatment, and then COVID hit, and we decided that, much to our surprise, homeschooling was a good fit for us. And that has continued to the present day. So I've done early childhood and elementary education. So I wanted to give you the three top reasons why I homeschool and continue to do so, despite the availability of other options like public or private school. And what I hope is that these statements will facilitate a greater understanding of where you rest in the spectrum of the availability and the viability of homeschool for your particular situation. So the number one reason I homeschool is the flexibility. A rather sobering statistic is that 54% of adults in the US have a literacy proficiency below a sixth grader. 54%. So there's a problem with literacy in education. Kids are not being educated in literacy adequately, obviously, or more than half of us would be able to read and would be more functionally literate, able to analyze complex texts for detailed information and so forth. What I like is that we've tried public school, but we found that our daughter was not being challenged in basic subject areas. She would come home with A after A after A after great job, and we're like, was any of this hard for you? And she was like, no, not really. So we're like, red flag. I can choose which subjects I educate in. I happen to live in a state that recently became ultra liberal with its homeschool oversight, meaning I have basically no oversight, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. We can choose what subjects we educate her in. We can choose what level we educate her at, and we can readily calibrate our curriculum. We can up scaffold or down scaffold based on her level of ability and her need for review, etc. So we have a lot of flexibility, and I can exercise a lot of my creativity in terms of what I choose to teach and how I choose to teach it, my pedagogy. And I can accelerate or decelerate the pacing based on, again, her ability and her needs at that time. The number two reason I homeschool is comfort. There are a lot of disturbing restrictions on bodily autonomy in, for example, the public school setting. We've attempted public school a couple of times, and we've withdrawn her twice or three times. I've lost count at this point. But it's not like we haven't tried public school. And we've been very disappointed. So one of the areas we were disappointed in is the lack of bodily autonomy afforded a child. So by that, I mean, they can't go to the bathroom when they want to. They can't go to the bathroom when they need to. There are truancy laws. I'm pretty sure in my state, and I'm sure in other states, where if you enroll in public school, you're accountable to the rules and regulations of the public school system. One of those being truancy laws. So, there's like a certain, I don't want to go too deep into the weeds here, but if I don't send her to school when the school thinks she should be there, then I can get into legal trouble. So on any given day, maybe a child is going through puberty, maybe they've gotten their first period and they'd just be more comfortable at home, or maybe they're mildly ill and just not feeling very well. I have the flexibility to choose when and where I educate. On some weeks we don't have school. On some weeks we have school 7 days a week. On some weeks we do half days. During the summer we take kind of a break. But I can calibrate educational expectations and performance rituals to how she is feeling, which has been tremendously, tremendously helpful. And it gives her a sense of autonomy and a sense of boundary setting. She knows how she feels when she feels that way, and she can set the appropriate boundaries. Also, we don't have like 20-minute lunch breaks that she's got to rush through and eat quickly. And, there's a whole host of problematic messages that sends a child, that they can't eat at a leisurely pace. It's actually physically unhealthy. And we were frustrated with the lack of time allocated to both socialization and physical activity in school, which is kind of ironic because, you know, the chief concern I would say for us with homeschooling is her socialization. But when we sent her to public school and she was in a highly social environment, they actually had a very rigid, very defined time that they could socialize in an unstructured way. So like at lunch, but you can't really do it at lunch because you're supposed to be eating, and that's like 20 minutes. And then at recess, you know, you've got to have time for physical activities. You can't devote that to socialization. So she really was lacking appropriate time to like be a person. So the third reason we choose to homeschool is safety. I mentioned this in another video I made recently, which is that it's a statistic that gun violence is the #1 killer of children in the US ages 1 through 19. Now that in and of itself is disturbing, but what's even more disturbing is a lot of these murders take place in school settings. Uvalde, Texas in 2022 comes to mind, where 28 people were killed. Sandy Hook Elementary in 2012 comes to mind, where 22 people were killed. You know, even one death from gun violence on school grounds is upsetting, but this is absolutely insane. I won't dwell on this too much here, but I mention it because it's a major reason we choose to homeschool. In 2025 alone, there were 53 deaths from gun violence on school grounds. Last year alone. This year, we're already at 21 deaths. And this is nationwide. This isn't one particular state. This is like total for the nation. That's not even counting wounded people. So school remains a threat to mortality in the US. It is on an evidence basis, it is unsafe to send your kids to school. I'm just quoting statistics. You can look these up for yourself. And that's disturbing, to say the least. What's also disturbing is that nothing's really being done about it, number one. Number two, that doesn't even count. I'm talking about physical violence. If we leap over into like emotional violence, bullying, that's also a problem. And that's also well documented. I'm a product of public school, and I recall a lot of like bullying. A lot of my memories of school are like learning a lot. I enjoyed learning, but I also experienced a lot of bullying, like many of my peers. It was big in the 90s, and I'm sure it's still big now. And now we also have cyberbullying in addition to like face-to-face bullying. So I want to say that a lot of the friendships I developed in public school, not to project my situation onto my daughter or anything, but this is just the facts. A lot of my friendships formed in the public school setting were trauma bonds, quite honestly. And the trauma bonding was based on our co-trauma that we were experiencing as a class, as a group. I mentioned the lack of bodily autonomy. We did not have that in school. We were, bored, or we weren't bored. We were accountable to bad authority, bad teachers that were abusing their authority. I know all of that is still going on. I think the face of it has changed a little bit, but it's still there. So quite honestly, our daughter is potentially unsafe. Almost guaranteed she's going to be uncomfortable because it's already happened to us. We've tried this. And it just lacks the flexibility to provide my daughter the challenge that she needs to grow and be healthy as a whole child. So what I want to say is that I know a lot of families, largely due to the exploitive wage work situation in the US, a lot of families don't have a choice but to send their kid to public school. We have a choice. We've taken it. Now, granted, we live with a great deal of sacrifice. We live slightly above the poverty line, have for our entire marriage. For the past few years, largely due to the fact that I've chosen to stay at home and do homeschool. Would I change any of it? Never. Our daughter is performing at or above age grade level in practically every subject, and she is really excelling in certain subjects. Like, I'm talking high school, college level, easily. So, all things considered, it's been a productive choice. It's been a unique choice, not one that many people understand or can relate to. And it's been a challenging choice. If you choose to do homeschool, prepare to be challenged. If you really care and if you really dig in. And if you really say, I'm going to give my child the best that I possibly can. This is not for everybody. but it is a good choice for our family based on the three factors I've mentioned.